So hi, this is Lou, welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing some little quick mini sketches of some Edinburgh landmarks. So I'm going to do something I haven't done in quite a few months, and that is walk into town. I want to take advantage of this lovely day and actually get outside, and I'm going to go and see kind of what Edinburgh's like. I haven't actually really been into town since the beginning of lockdown, but things are really starting to come back to life now. So I'm going to go and pick up a few things for a future video, and while I'm there I'm going to try and get some inspiration for some artworks. I really feel like I want to take advantage of living in such a beautiful place and get some pictures and get some ideas for future paintings. So now I'm back in my studio and I have with me some of the photographs that I took while I was out, and I've printed these out so I can work from them, and I'm going to decide what to draw, and then I'm going to do some little drawings on watercolour paper with a fine liner pen, and then I'm going to add some details with watercolour. So let's start with these. These are photos of the Scott Monument on Princes Street in Edinburgh, and it's something I've been thinking of drawing for a while. I really like all of the kind of these gothic pointy details on it. So let's give this a go. So I'm going to be using these fine liners today. I think I'm mostly going to be using 0.2, but we'll see as we go along. And the important thing is that your fine liners are waterproof. That means that we can paint watercolour paint over the top of them and the pen isn't going to run. I've also got a pencil which I'm going to do some sketching in. Mine's a mechanical pencil, but any pencil will work. I've also got a rubber for rubbing out my pencil marks. And then I've got a brush. This is a watercolour brush. It's a round brush and it's a number 4. You can see it comes to a nice fine point, which is really good for adding in little details. And then my watercolour set are Windsor and Newton, but use whatever watercolours you have. I've got 2 pots of water. One I use for rinsing out my brush, and then the other I keep quite clean and I add that into the paint to keep the mixes nice and clean. And I've got some towel for cleaning off my brush. I'm working on cold pressed watercolour paper. That's the normal watercolour paper. It's got a bit of texture to it. And this is an A4 sheet that I've cut into 4, so this is A6. When you've got a scene like this, it can be really kind of complex and overwhelming to know where to start drawing something. So there are ways to simplify it. One of the ways is the camera, which creates a crop for you anyway, so it helps you to frame your scene. So I use a camera as a tool. I'm going to simplify this further, and I'm going to try and ignore any of the surroundings and just think about drawing the monument. I'm going to start with a pencil sketch. And the first thing I need to do is just to look at where the big shapes are. So this has obviously got like a big triangular shape here. So if I put that in first, that'll help me kind of fill the paper, so I can decide where on this I want it to be. So let's put the top here and the bottom about here. And then I can draw in my rough triangle shape, and I know that's where the monument is going to go. Then let's have a look again, and how can we divide this up further? Well, there's quite a line here in the architectural detail, and then there's another one here and here and here. So this seems to divide into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of equal portions. So let's see if I can get those lines as guidance onto this triangle. So we've got this arch here, which is fairly obvious, and that comes to just below this horizontal line there. So if I put a point in the centre there, then I can draw an arch down like that. And now, sticking with the pencil, I'm just going to slowly add a few more shapes. So there are some little towers at the side. So I'll just add like a rectangle with a triangle on the top, and then keep adding those little rectangles and triangles as I move up the tower. So now I'm going in with a pen, and I'm using the pencil lines that I've put in as a guide. But if I think they're a little bit wrong and if it looks a bit wonky, then I'll use the pen to correct that line. And this building has got lots and lots of detail on it, and I'm not going to be able to get that all in. But I just want to give like an impression of some of it. So I'm using the pen, and I'm using it quite lightly. You can see it kind of skips over the paper a little bit. And if I do that at first, when I put those bigger shapes in, then that gives me a chance to go over it again, and I can reinforce some of the lines. And also, if I need to move some, it's not that obvious. So there, I did one in a little bit of the wrong place. I'll just put in another one next to it. And yeah, you wouldn't notice that the first line was wrong, really. So it's up to you how much detail you add as you go along. I like to break it down into bigger shapes and then slightly smaller shapes and then slightly smaller shapes, and then finally go in with the detail. See, I love detail, and I really want to be putting in all of the little frilly bits and the architectural, decorative details. But I need to kind of restrain myself and make sure that I get in like the outlines of the building and where the windows are and those kind of things first, before I then start putting in little decorative details. Because if I didn't, I know that I'd end up with a building that didn't look very balanced in terms of proportion. So when you draw this, you might notice some things that I didn't, and you may think some things are more prominent that I've left out, and you may think that some of the things that I've put in aren't really all that important. But that's why doing a sketch like this is the artist's interpretation of the building. So now I've got most of my outlines and major shapes in, I can start moving into putting some of that detail that I love. So little lines of circles, I can put in some of the smaller archways and make sure I outline them a few times to show some of the carving in the pillars and that kind of thing. I put in the steps at the base of the monument and then a pedestal. And here's my little squiggly interpretation of Walter Scott in his toga, like he never wore. And then I'm in my happy place. I'm adding little circles and little lines, trying to fill in areas that I think look quite detailed. And I'm really just using my pen to give an impression that there is something interesting going on in certain places. So I could go on forever doing this, but this is just a little quick sketch, and I'm not really sure that I want to spend much longer on it. I think I just need to get enough in there to give the impression that it's kind of fully featured and it's got lots of decorative stonework and interesting turrets with bobbly bits and little decorative pieces on the top. And just a few kind of wiggly lines and a dot here and there will give that impression. And yeah, just a little bit more detail at the bottom. Maybe darken under the arch a little bit, just to give the impression that there's like a shadow under there. And yeah, I think that might be about it. So now I'm going to add some colour to my drawing, and I'm going to use a raw umber, which is a kind of yellowy brown. So I'm just taking some colour from the pan, adding it to the palette, and then if it's a little bit stiff, I'm adding some water into it. And the Scott Monument is actually quite dark, so I'm actually going to use a little bit of this mixed in with some Payne's Grey, which is actually, it's kind of like a very dark navy blue. So I'm going to just use a mix of these two different colours and create a wash all over the monument. So the Scott Monument has some lighter areas where the stone's obviously been repaired, and then it has lots of darker areas where the stone's been weathered and aged over the years. So I'm just creating some lighter areas and then surrounding them with this darker colour and allowing the two colours to bleed into one another. And hopefully that will give that impression of the weathered and aged stone. Let's wait for that to dry, and then I'm going to come back and I might add in a little bit of more shadow and definition. So watercolour always dries a little lighter than it is when it's wet. And so I'm going in and reinforcing some of the areas in the monument that I think are particularly dark. And then I use just the very point of my brush to draw fine lines under any elements that I think would be kind of sticking out a little bit. So I want to show that there's a shadow underneath them. I'm going to darken these kind of window bits and just under the buttresses there, just to make those stand out a little bit more. So this building here is the Royal Scottish Academy. It's a big art gallery, and I feel very sentimental about this place because I've had some work exhibited in here. So it's got this kind of classic Grecian style. It's very symmetrical, and it's got these big pillars, which are a great feature. And then I took another photo from a different angle because it's got this woman sat on the top, and then it's got this lovely detail in here, which I really want to draw. But I'm going to have to restrain myself and get the big shapes in first. So I start by marking the centre top, where the top of the lady's head would be. And then most of the building is like a big rectangle with a smaller rectangle on top. So I try and get that shape in with my pencil. I really want to get that kind of triangular roof shape in. And yeah. And then I spend a little bit of time trying to work out where the pillars are going to be. So it takes a little bit of work going over them with a pencil a few times to make sure I get the right number of pillars and they're spaced out equally. And then there's a pillar at either side of the building. I realised that I forgot to put in enough space at the bottom to include some steps. So I'll mark those where those should be in with my pencil as well. And then I spend a little bit of time with a pencil refining the shape of the roof because there's a few different little kind of rectangular bits on there. And then I've just put in some squiggles that show where, like on the top, there are some sphinxes and there's that lady with a big dress. I decide to put the tops of the pillars in so that I can draw from the top to the bottom. And I've drawn my pencil lines, they're all straight, but actually the pillars start out a little bit narrow at the top and they get wider as they go down. So I try and show that with the pen when I do the pen drawing. And again, I'm trying to get the big shapes in first, but I can't help putting a little detail in, and I start drawing details around the windows and then some areas where the like some detailed stonework is. But then I decide, right, I've got to move on to the roof. So I'm going around the pencil lines that I've put in and fixing them if I feel they're in the wrong place. Keep referring back to my photo and just checking that I'm happy with the dimensions of everything. So now I've got all the big shapes in, I can go back in and add some more detail. And I don't need to worry too much about copying it precisely. So some little squiggles, and then these little wreaths on the front I can just do with a few lines and a circle. And I just like repeat that all across the front. And then I can do the detailed area in the triangular bit of the roof. And there are lots of kind of curly frond-like shapes in there, and some little spiral shapes, and some like a plant in a vase. They give that impression without having to draw too finely and copy too finely what's already there. And similarly, when it comes to the figure on the roof, I can take the overall shape of her skirts and her shoulders and her head, put some little points on there to show that she's wearing a crown, and that's all I really need to do there. So I decide to just go in again with the pen and add some light lines onto the pillars. I'm using exactly the same pen as I did, but if you use it on its side rather than straight on, you get a much lighter line. And again, I can use the pen to go over some of the lines that I think should be more important and more prominent. When it comes to adding colours to this, I'm doing something really simple. I'm giving it a wash of raw umber all over, so just a flat colour all over the whole of the building. I'm not being too worried about covering it evenly, because if I leave a couple of spaces that are uncovered, it'll just look like texture in the stone. And now I go in with that shadow colour that I'd created for the Scott Monument and draw in where I think the dark bits are going to be. So underneath anything that would be sticking out on the building, and also beneath the pillars. So I decide to put a line at the top of each of the pillars just to show that's in shadow a little bit. And then I decide that the space between the pillars needs to be a little bit darker as well. So I'm going to go in and add another layer of shadow under there. For my third one, I took this photo here, and there's a very obvious castle there, which is pretty cool. But actually I thought I might do the fountain. So I took a close-up picture of the fountain here. It's really interesting, like turquoisey blue colour. So I'm just going to do this one. I'm not going to talk through it, but the principles are exactly the same. I'll do a pencil sketch working out the big shapes. I'll go in with pen and then slowly add details. you'll see I managed to splash a little bit of paint there. So I wanted to show you what you can do to get rid of that. So if you take a knife blade, you can scratch away at the paper, and you just kind of scratch the top surface of the paper away. You can't correct big areas like this. And you do see a little bit of the paper texture looking a little bit furry, but sometimes that's better than having a splash of paint in the middle of your painting. So here are my 3 quick sketches of Edinburgh landmarks, and I'm going to put links down below to the photos that I've taken so that if you want to have a go at this, you can use the exact photos that I've used as reference. So if you do give any of these a go, I'd love to know. You can always post them on Instagram and tag me at Lou Rachel Davis, because I love seeing the things that you've made. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on there. You can follow me on Facebook at Lou Davis Artist and Maker. I have a Patreon where you can follow me as well. So on Patreon I post resources, like I post scans of paintings I've done like these, so you could use them as note cards or postcards, greetings cards, whatever you like. So thanks very much for watching today. I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more like this, then please do subscribe. I post art, making and sewing videos every week, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks, bye!